are listening to episode 63 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and this is a solo show all about the coronavirus. So the coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19, is trending right now. I go on YouTube, I go on social media, and everyone's making a post about the coronavirus and what their recommended form of treatment is. A lot of people say just don't worry about it, it's overblown, and then you have the other extreme. I'm somewhere in the middle. It seems like it's real. It seems like what's really happening in China, especially near the beginning, was suppressed from the evidence that I've seen. So I think the balanced approach is to be somewhere in the middle, where to be cautious and not just kind of sweep it under the rug, say, oh, it's whatever, I'm not going to change anything. So the coronavirus was started in the Wuhan province in China. It's my understanding that 5G was implemented about 2 months before the outbreak. And you could find a lot of alarmist information, a lot of sensationalist information about 5G and the effects of non-native EMF, which are very real. But it's kind of just one of those things where we have to just have a few things in place and then not worry about it. And to me, the number one thing to have in place is to have a constant supply or influx of magnesium. And there's over 30 different forms of magnesium. I heard from a few people, they're flying off the shelf. A lot of them are ineffective. Pretty much all of them are synthetic. As I've said in a previous solo show, there are only 3 forms of magnesium. Magnesium in water, magnesium in food, and magnesium in salt, magnesium chloride. The magnesium in the water is the big one that almost everyone isn't getting, and that's magnesium bicarbonate. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of the pristine hydro water revival systems, either the travel system, which you can convert into an undercounter, they have a blog on that, or the undercounter filter, which has bigger filters and it lasts longer, but that injects in magnesium bicarbonate, which does help to protect against calcium efflux, which is the biggest part of how non-native EMFs harm us, is by calcium flooding into the cell. That's the same when you're stressed, calcium floods in the cell. It's a stress response. And it causes a lot of other issues, and actually other stuff will flood in as well, namely iron. And so non-native EMFs will even make iron overload worse, not to mention calcification, which then results in fibrosis, which is why I created the CLF protocol to address all of them. But you have to stop the inputs while you're on the protocol. That's the ideal, to lessen your levels of calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. So back to the coronavirus, I do believe that there was a 5G component to weaken the immune system, because those people were most likely drinking tap water, or not the best water, especially not the water that's acid-free, contaminant-free, and bicarbonate-rich like pristine hydro. And when you're magnesium deficient, you get hit the hardest with non-native electromagnetic fields. And I remember living in apartment complexes, the worst one I ever lived in. I went out to the smart meter area, and there were literally 16 smart meters in a line, because it was like a super factory farm apartment complex when I was living in Pacific Beach, San Diego, California. And it was a very, very small apartment complex. I mean, I remember the office smelled like, I don't even know, burning metal, like burning plastic or something crazy. And the manager was just working in that area. It was just a super, super toxic environment all the way around. I'm sure it was just completely cancer causing just to live there. And people don't take that into account. For some reason, people don't take into account the accumulative effect of poisons, like taking omega-3 DHA algae oil or fish oil, omega-3 supplements, the deadly toxic accumulation of omega-3s, or of the air that you're breathing, or of just the constant hit on your cells of non-native EMF, of calcium efflux constantly happening, and you not having enough magnesium. So the best thing for your total health, not just your immune system, which I'll talk about in this podcast episode, is to get a pristine hydro travel system, get the electrolyte balance powder, start making your own magnesium concentrate, and to start drinking that water. The magnesium bicarbonate's already in the water in trace amounts, but you make the concentrate with it, and now you're really making headway on raising your magnesium levels. So I think that's a big issue that's not talked about, is the form of magnesium. And usually the amount recommended is really sad. Influencers, people with big accounts, they say, oh, just take 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium. That does nothing. That does absolutely nothing for your health. Zero effect whatsoever. You have to get above, I would say, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 milligrams. Get into the gram range. Then you actually are going to start to have effects with magnesium. So I really look at things from a foundational basement level with health. And I just find that people are going to herbs, and there's nothing wrong with having these little things that we could take. Turmeric, oregano, all these different things. It's all good, but make sure before you take those things that you're not severely RBC magnesium deficient, because then you're just spinning your wheels and you're getting rocked if you're living in the city, if you're living in an apartment complex, getting slammed with non-native electromagnetic fields. And they definitely do affect the immune system. There's many, many studies on that. Someone actually sent me a Dr. Cowan video, how he was talking about 5G caused the coronavirus. And I haven't checked it out yet, but that sounds like an interesting theory that has some weight behind it because of non-native EMF's effects on the immune system, and with the context that everyone has iron overload, calcification, and everyone's magnesium deficient, which all those things go hand in hand. And so I'm here in Idaho. I don't watch the news. I'm really in the dark with all of this. I have friends that watch the news, and I hear from them. And it seems like the more you watch the news, the more kind of freaked out or amped up that you get because of what they're saying. I mean, there are things happening, like they're banning firearm sales, alcohol sales, they're closing schools in LA. I've heard that. Even airports are at risk of bankruptcy by May, which is pretty quick, where the government might have to step in and help them out. So there is a serious component to this, but there are really simple solutions that are just going way over people's heads. And how about just talking about the metabolism and having a strong, healthy metabolism, which most people don't have, to have a strong immune system? I have a study pulled up here, Science Direct. It's actually a really good one. Coronavirus disease 2019, coronaviruses and blood safety. Li Chang, February 21, 2020. And it talks about the coronavirus. It goes pretty in depth. Coronaviruses are enveloped positive single-stranded RNA viruses. Usually, coronaviruses are vulnerable to acid pH, basic pH, and heat, but seem to be more stable at 4 degrees Celsius. So 4 degrees Celsius is actually 39 degrees Fahrenheit. 39 degrees Fahrenheit, that sounds cold. And so what happens when you have a low metabolism? What happens when you have cold hands and feet all the time? What happens when you listen to Dave Asprey and you go keto or bulletproof or intermittent fasting and you're always cold, and yet you think you're on the program. Well, your metabolism's trashed because you're not giving the body the primary fuel, which is sugar, carbohydrate, glucose. And you can make glucose from gluconeogenesis in the liver, but the keto people never tell you the side effects of gluconeogenesis. What are the side effects of forcing your body into a backup system to get sugar? It's called stress. It's called lipolysis. It's called lipid peroxidation, polyunsaturated fats stored in your adipose, released into your bloodstream. They oxidize because you have heat and oxygen. Even if you're cold all the time, your body's warm enough, as a human being, even if it's, 97.6, it's still warm enough to oxidize these 22 carbon bond, super long chain fatty acids. And that exacerbates the stress response, which will then increase estrogen, serotonin, create this huge downstream effects of just shutting down cellular respiration throughout your entire system. So that little line, but in the study, but seemed to be more stable at 4 degrees Celsius. And then if I scroll down a little bit, here's a table, different methods on inactivation of coronavirus in blood products and laboratory tissue culture. Methods: heat, number 1. Mechanism of action: denaturing the secondary structures of proteins. So just using heat. I'm a big fan of sauna therapy. I backed off a little bit because of my studies with stress, but I think it does have benefits in context. I kind of go in waves, kind of intuitively on when I use the sauna, but it is very effective to get rid of especially heavy metals. You don't need to take liposomal supplements and spend $1,000 to do a heavy metal cleanse. You can just sweat them out, and that's very, very effective. So heat, number 1. And if you're keto or intermittent fasting or skipping breakfast, guess what? You don't have heat. You are colder than a person that eats carbs, that doesn't skip breakfast, that eats multiple times a day. They have more heat, which means they have a stronger immune system, which means that they can inactivate the coronavirus. So keep that fire burning. It's like Josh Rubin used that analogy of your fireplace. And you could throw paper on there, and that's like doing a liquid, like a fruit juice or even milk. It's like throwing a quick burning paper on there. There's a flash, it'll burn very hot, and then it's out. But when you do something like grass-fed beef, like a steak or ground beef or bison, or eggs and some sprouted sourdough or a substantial meal, bone broth, with all those things, you'll find that it's like throwing a log on the fire. And you'll feel this when you eat different meals and you get the combination right that works for you. You'll find that you have a steady burning heat, and you will heat up, especially as a man, but as a woman as well. I mean, it's important to have body heat, not only for just being comfortable and being able to thrive in the elements, but just to have a strong immune system and to beat something like the coronavirus. So scrolling down, UVA light, UVB light, and UVC light. Each one of those has a different effect on the coronavirus. That's pretty cool. So one mediates the oxygen-independent electron transfer, and that's actually with riboflavin, which is a B vitamin, which is in like red meat. So get your red meat, get your UVB. I actually just put the Spurti light on my website, and that's a vitamin D lamp. I get so many questions, and this is big. Like my friend told me in Iran, vitamin D supplementation is big. They're recommending, I think, 10,000 IUs a day for people, which is a fairly modest amount. I've seen insane recommendations with vitamin D, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with a lot of people on the vitamin D recommendations. I don't think that it should be in supplements, period. I don't think it should be with K2 supplements, especially. I think it's more harmful than good to supplement a hormone D. It's not a vitamin, it's a hormone D. You should get that from light exposure. And if you're not getting it from the sun, then you can get something like the Spurti lamp, which I have on my Matt Blackburn website, and get that UV light in. UVA, UVB. UVC is actually the one where you can buy those bulbs that sterilize surfaces, but the sun has them all, right? You just want to make sure that you take some Mitolife PUFA Protect before you go in the sun, because you can do more harm than good. And there are studies, I think I have them linked on the product page, on how vitamin E in your blood helps protect your cells against photo damage or damage from light, which can happen if you're vitamin E deficient or you eat a ton of PUFAs. I think I remember I used to eat a lot of fried foods. If I would eat a fried meal and then go out in the sun, it was like instant burning. Like I would feel my skin on fire. And it's interesting, if I would do a heavy sugar meal, even milk, which is lactose, which is a form of sugar, that would be like an internal sunscreen. Sugar itself has a pro-cellular respiration, pro-metabolic effect that will protect against everything, not only photo damage, but you really want to combine that with vitamin E. And I usually take four capsules at a time, once or twice a day, especially with like a steak. It's a really, really good combo. So just be cautious of the light thing. We're heading into summer here. You have a lot of sun worshipers, a lot of people saying, don't wear sunscreen, don't wear sunglasses, which I agree with, and I've been saying that for many years. But since I've researched the effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids with light very intensely and changed my mind 180 on this topic, I've learned that it's not beneficial to have PUFAs and DHA in your blood, in your tissues with sunlight. It's actually the exact opposite. It's poisonous, it's toxic, it's harmful, it causes cancer. And so you want to do the opposite. And the antidote to DHA is vitamin E. And so my Mitolife line is kind of like the rebuttal, kind of like the antithesis to PUFA. My entire product line addresses the poisoning of omega-3 DHA, specifically algae oil, but let's just say fish oil, krill oil, algae oil, seal oil, cod liver oil, all of those concentrated sources of polyunsaturated fatty acids that are pushed so hard in health food stores, pushed so hard with Harvard and all of these Rothschild-funded schools that are pushed so hard. You have to ask yourself, why are omega-3s pushed so hard? The answer is because they feed directly the cancer, the diabetes, the heart disease industry, the Alzheimer's industry, every industry, because they cause disease. Polyunsaturated fatty acids cause disease at the foundational level. So you want to talk about protecting yourself against the coronavirus? How about become DHA deficient? Become PUFA deficient. They're not required for fetal development. They're not required for brain health. They're not required, period. It's like iron. If you supplement iron or you supplement PUFAs, you're setting yourself up for a world of pain. To forget the names of your family when you're older, to forget their face, to even forget your own name. You basically go mental. You lose your brain because lipid peroxidation destroys the cell. It breaks the machinery of the cell. Your cells can't breathe. They suffocate. You can't get oxygen. You can't utilize oxygen. Everything fails. And this thing, lipofuscin, that's a complex of iron and PUFA, is so diabolical in how it works in the cell, because it not only prevents oxygen from getting in, but it prevents the utilization of oxygen. Because when you have excess iron that's in the wrong spot, you have copper deficiency, which copper regulates iron, just like magnesium regulates calcium. So you have a ton of lipofuscin, can't get the oxygen in, can't even use the oxygen because there's no copper there to use it. Cytochrome C oxidase is copper dependent. Any oxidase enzyme is copper dependent. So This is a foundational thing. And who's talking about PUFAs and the coronavirus? Nobody. Everyone's just saying, quarantine and do this and do that. And how about let's just change how we're living? But human psychology doesn't work like that. I guess people want quick solutions, and those exist. I'm a combination. I'm a fan of using a combination of short and long-term techniques, but I think people are focused too much on the short term. Nothing wrong with those. It's just you want to do some long-term stuff like change the water you're drinking, change your light exposure, get the good light in, get some blue blockers, get the bad light out. I would switch the bulbs for orange and red, get those from lightbulbs.com, and just make some changes. So that was a little tangent. The last one on the table here is really interesting. Methylene blue plus visible light. So a lot of these are combinations. And there's the riboflavin plus UVB, which is the B vitamin. A lot of vegans deficient in riboflavin. But methylene blue plus visible light. What's methylene blue? I kept fish tanks for a while. And if you kept fish, you know that in the pet store, they sell this stuff called methylene blue. And you add it to your fish tank if your fish get an infection called ick. And it will wipe it out just by adding it to the water. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are a lot of human studies on methylene blue. I have one pulled up here. Cellular and molecular actions of methylene blue in the nervous system. And it goes through all the different diseases: Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, psychosis, cognitive deficits, neuroprotection, pain, itching. It just goes on. And it's actually an electron donor. It has a lot of interesting effects. It stimulates mitochondrial respiration by donating electrons to the electron chain transport. So it can kind of fix, in simple terms, a lot of defects in the mitochondrial. It's like a quick fix kind of a thing. And I had Georgie Dinkoff on the podcast, aka Hey Dude, and he has a little store where he sells drops of it. If you don't want to do the fish brand. And even on my website, I just threw up, my friend Ingrid told me about this company, Transcriptions Canatine. And I'm very skeptical on nootropics. I think people jump to nootropics first. I jumped on board with this one just because I agree with the ingredients. And it's just 4 ingredients: caffeine, hemp extract, methylene blue, and nicotine in these little lozenges. And to me, the best ingredient is the methylene blue. And you can just take the drops. It's a lot more affordable. But this product, I think, is just easier to take. And it's more fun, for sure. And it's nice to have that little kick from the caffeine as well, which does help the metabolism if you combine caffeine with food. So you can find that on my website, matt-blackburn.com. That's pretty interesting that something as cheap and simple as methylene blue has an effect on the coronavirus. And if you want to nerd out with me, the mechanism of action is that it intercalates into nucleic acid and mediates the formation of singlet oxygen upon illumination, which means visible light. And so I would use red light therapy with this, maybe 4 capsules of the MCT PUFA Protect product that I just released, and some methylene blue. That would be an amazing combo for the coronavirus. And also getting that magnesium bicarbonate in, getting the foundational stuff in, not drinking hard water anymore. Hard water is anything over 80 parts per million. Not drinking water with acid rain in it anymore, or with iron in it, which is spring and well water and tap water, right? And just starting to get on the filtered water, which is going to make a huge difference in your overall health, not just your immune system, but just how you function emotionally and mentally and everything. So don't be freaked out about the coronavirus. We have the solutions. Another temporary one, I actually just made a post on this. If you're following me on Facebook or Instagram, it's just Matt Blackburn on both, on the oregano products. And they actually just released one called Orega Shield, which is a beeswax emulsification topical that you rub on your hands for 24 hours protection. It's oregano oil based. A little hand rub that you can use if you're in an airport or a crowded area. I would definitely use it. And they also have Orega spray, which is amazing to just have in your bathroom, to have in your bag as a hand sanitizer. And either that or homemade colloidal silver are my two hand sanitizer choices. And I rarely wash my hands, pretty much never in a public restroom. And I'll just use either of those things. And I think they work a lot better. They're a lot safer than, getting tap water on your hands and all this stuff. So that's also another option. Also, their P73 wild oil of oregano, either the regular or the super strength, are really, really powerful. Or their Orega Resp capsules are really good. Just all of their oregano-based products are amazing, and you really feel it. And someone has asked, how much should I take if we're talking about the oregano drops? If it was me, I would just take a couple drops every hour. It really depends, but that is very, very strong. You don't have to drink the bottle. You don't have to go crazy and overboard unless you have Lyme or something. But yeah, just have the foundations down. You should already have oregano in your medicine cabinet. You should already be on the magnesium bicarbonate. You should already be on Shilajit, whether it's the pristine hydro powder or my panacea tablets. You should already be on the minerals. You should already be drinking raw milk, whether it's raw goat's milk or a Jersey or a Guernsey milk. Try to stay away from Holstein, but if that's all you have, definitely better than nothing. Get on the raw dairy, because raw dairy is extremely important for the immune system. It contains actual vitamin A, retinol, which works with the other fat-soluble vitamins and vitamin D to help build your immune system. To build the mucus lining, you need vitamin A, but not from carrots, not from plant sources, from animal sources, milk, butter, cheese, egg yolks, all of these things. Traditional animal foods, very, very, very powerful for the immune system. But if you combine those, which is what I've been doing, with, you can call it vitamin E therapy, you can call it vitamin E supplementation, whatever you want to call it. Vitamin E, combining that with the traditional ancestral animal foods, that is a really, really, really powerful combination. Because even though grass-fed beef has more vitamin E than grain-fed beef, it doesn't mean that it's still enough to counteract a life of PUFA consumption. And if you're listening to this and you're 50 or 60, you're older, as they say, then you have a ton of PUFAs in your body. As of the time of this recording, I'm 32, and I remember growing up eating tons and tons of fast food with my friends. And a lot of us just forget or downplay how much we ate out, how many PUFAs we consumed during our teenage years, our childhood, when we were at sleepovers, when we were with friends, when we were at school, field trips, wherever. Every meal, every snack counts, and it's still in you. How are you going to get it out? You're going to use vitamin E, saturated fats, and glycogen for the liver, which is sugar, carbohydrate, and animal protein, gelatin, broth, anything with a face, white fish, eggs, milk, red meat. And you're going to support your system while you're giving it vitamin E to kick out these toxic polyunsaturated fats that are stored in your tissues. That's how you increase the immune system, because polyunsaturated fats, aka PUFAs, are immunosuppressive. That's how they can have some beneficial effects. Chemotherapy has some beneficial effects too, although the final effect is often death, which isn't ideal. PUFAs work the same way. Just because you have a beneficial effect in the short term doesn't mean it's going to end well. And believe me, it doesn't end well with algae oil, doesn't end well with krill oil, with fish oil, cod liver oil, because it ends with a heart attack and dementia and Alzheimer's, neurodegeneration of every single type, and just a total breakdown of every function in your entire body. So that's all for today on the coronavirus. Little announcement, I just released the version 2 of Mitolife PUFA Protect, and this is actually in a base of MCT oil. So MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides, and it's either sourced from coconut or palm. Mine is sourced from coconut, so it's refined coconut oil. Basically, you can think of it as coconut oil without the PUFAs, because even though there's less than 10% polyunsaturated fatty acids in coconut oil, it's still good for you. It's good to cook with, it's good to eat because it's mostly saturated. But with MCT, there's zero PUFAs. So now my PUFA Protect product is 100% PUFA free, which was bothering a lot of people because they couldn't get in their head that vitamin E is the antidote for PUFA. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to make it 100% PUFA free, even though it doesn't matter, right? Like I would consume, and I do consume when I'm eating at an airport or whatever, a burger cooked in canola oil, right? Who cares? I have Mitolife PUFA Protect. I pop 4 capsules, even 2 capsules, even 1 capsule is enough to do the job. But I just like popping 4 for the athletic benefits and the mitochondrial benefits. And the higher dose, you have more benefits with vitamin E. And I do that and I'm fine and I feel great and I don't get that fatigue. I don't feel lethargic. I don't get that brain fog after I eat an airport meal because I have PUFA Protect. And if you combine that with Panacea, you take some Panacea and some PUFA Protect. And if you have digesitol, you can take that too. But let's just say the first 2 is a primary strategy. Then you're really covered, right? You don't have to micromanage your entire life in every place you go out to eat. And you can still live your life while you're cognizant of all the poisons, right? Because we can't avoid it. Can't avoid anything, right? Pandemics. The main strategy is to be immune to all of this, be able to just walk right through it. And it just goes right through you. Just goes right through you. Whether it's an airport meal or whether it's the coronavirus, it just goes right through you. That's the goal. And that's the information that I share through my social media platforms and through Mitolife, is that foundation should just be so strong and so balanced, and your mitochondria can breathe. Your cells can perform respiration. They can get oxygen in and they could utilize oxygen. And because of that, they can generate ATP or cellular energy. You can make some water with that. That is health. And that's where we should be headed. It's that foundation that we should work from. And it doesn't work on keto. It doesn't work on vegan. It doesn't work on carnivore. It works on balance. And that's really my main message. Eat real food. Take strategic supplements for balancing, like the Panacea Shilajit, like the vitamin E, and you don't have to worry about the small stuff. And I would incorporate some oregano, and definitely go back and listen to my interviews with Dr. Cass Ingram. He's a funny guy. He's very entertaining, very informative, and very fun to speak with and listen to. And he shares, to me, the best information about oregano in the world. Thanks for tuning in to this solo episode. Matt-Blackburn.com. I have all my recommended products can check out that methylene blue one that I talked about. It's called Blue Carnitine Proscriptions. You can check out the new PUFA Protect Vitamin E at mitolife.co. If you haven't ordered any of my products yet, use the discount code FIRSTTIME and you'll save 15% on your first order. And thanks so much for listening to these shows and supporting my work. Really means a lot. Please share this with your friends. I release a new episode every Friday. And don't stress. Remember that stress shuts down your immune system. So we have the solutions. Until next week, I'm Matt Blackburn.